the new Xbox series. Oh, hold on, I got some students. Nakaya, Kiera, how are you doing? Nakaya, are you right? Are you in the right class now? Okay. Everybody doing good? That's what's up. Let me get my roster out so I can send an invitation. Shirley Ann, hello. How are we today? You know this. There's this form of human communication called talking, and you can like use these things in your voice box and say, "Hello, Mr. Townsend. You won't crumble."
Sorry. Hi. I was eating Oreos, so my mouth is like full. Hi.
What you munching on?
The red velvet.
Oh, the red velvet cake.
No, red velvet Oreos.
Ooh, red velvet. I didn't even know they had. You put me on to something new this morning. Red velvet Oreos. That sounds like the fattest thing I've ever heard, but it sounds delicious.
Yeah. It's an addiction.
Hey, I like being. I'm not fat, but I like being. I like doing fat things, like just sitting down and eating a whole plate or whatever.
True.
I got. I think everybody got chubby during this pandemic. You know where to go. Okay, let me just send out an invite, and we're going to get started. Well, think about it this way, guys. We only have one more week of this, and then we have a couple weeks off. So we got a nice break coming up. Adams. Sabrine. She'll crucify me if I don't say it right. There we go. Okay, so I'm just sending out a second invite real quick. Shamir Newsom. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. Oh, come on. I'm sorry, I got like 90 tabs open at once. Are all you guys on Chromebooks?
Yes.
I tried to use one the other day, and it was like the worst thing in my life. I'm so used to a Mac. Them Chromebooks are hard. It seems like it's hard to move the cursor around. Okay. All right, I sent it out. All right, so I only have 3 people so far. I'll wait like 2 more minutes and get started. I'm gonna get back to these. Oh, Nakai, you're on a MacBook too. Yeah, me. I have a MacBook Pro. I love MacBooks. Pretty much everything I have is Apple. I just want to get back to this, Shirley Ann. I want to get back to these red velvet Oreos you're talking about. You want to send me a picture or something.
They're actually they're good. They're just hard to find. They're like limited edition. They come out a lot in Christmas time. I think it's because they're red. I had to go to 2 different Targets to find it.
Oh wow! So you got the exclusive cookies. Good morning. Um, Myra is, I'm assuming that's the Myra Boston.
I'm Mara Jackson.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Mara Boston too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got both of you guys right next to each other. So I'm noticing a pattern that seems like the girls show up more for class than the boys. Do you know why that is, ladies?
Because boys are dumb.
They're not dumb. They're just developmentally delayed.
No, they always sleep.
Women mature faster than men. It's like to my age as a guy to get it. Okay, let me see what else I have. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I don't know why now I have that song in my head.
Come on, don't do it.
Listen, my grandmother's name is Mary Jackson, and we used to sing that to her constantly.
Yeah, my grandma made them sing it to us. Sing it to me. But she make her own version of the song and sing it to me.
Where's my G mom? I'll show you a picture of my G mom. Where's she at? Ugh. Whoops. If I can get it off without tearing my wall apart.
Don't do that.
No, this is my G mom right here.
The one in the middle or the one on the side?
That's my grandmom. That's my dad. It's my uncle, my aunt, and my mother.
That's a wedding picture.
Yep, this is from like 1990 something.
God damn.
What you mean, GD? I was born.
That's not a long time ago, but that's a long time ago.
You realize I'm 43, right?
Oh wow.
I'm an old man.
You're not old.
That's okay. Cocoa butter make me not crack, so I'm cool. All right. So any concerns before we get started the class? Does anybody have any concerns with Summit or cocoa butter is the spice of life? I got my Queen Helene somewhere around here. So any concerns with Summit or assignments that are overdue or anything like that before we get started?
Yes, so I still haven't been able to, I still haven't been able to get my computer fixed just yet. So I know I probably have some assignments that need to be done.
What are you working on? Your cell phone?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a way that I could do this. Maybe you can just send the work through your cell phone, and I can just tell you what it is. I can email you the checkpoints, and you could just fill them out and send them back, and I can put them in Summit.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. Let me. I know I probably put it already, but let's see. I'm gonna put my email in here.
No, I got your email.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Let me put you on my list to do here. That it stretches 3 miles long. I'll send you the checkpoints. Okay.
All right.
All right. So good morning. Welcome everyone. We're gonna continue to talk about celebrity and athlete responsibilities. Let's see. That. Should be the 1968 Olympics. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, come on, stop. Okay, so most of this, this is actually 2 lessons in one. So this would be, this is the checkpoint number 2. So I'll just go over it again. Actually, let me take it out of. So this is what I will send you, okay? So just to have a clarity on what checkpoint number 2 is, you have 2 options. For the first one, you can just create a simple advertisement. You can take your favorite celebrity, okay? Doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's like school appropriate, you know. You take your favorite celebrity and you're going to have them yes, Shirley Ann, that day, my building has construction on it and someone tripped the fire alarm. So they actually evacuated my building. I found that out through Miss Kelsey. So that's why I was not here that day. I was literally outside in the rain.
Wait, huh?
No, Shirley Ann was sending me a message about, I think it was like last week or a day, that she came back and I wasn't here. And I was telling her that that day we had like a fire alarm go off inside our building. And so like we were all evacuated out of my building. And
I'm just sitting here. I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, okay, what is he reading? Like,
it was a private message. That's why you didn't see it.
oh,
That's all. I know this online is a little bit confusing. All right, so back to what I was saying. So your checkpoint number 2 is you can create an endorsement using your favorite celebrity for a social cause. So you can make it by hand, which means you can draw it. You can make it in a computer or you can write it out. If it is hand drawn, please take a picture and cut and paste it into Summit or send it to me. You can be creative as you like. Remember that an endorsement is simply promoting something. So you can make a banner, a billboard, or an advertisement. You choose your celebrity and create an endorsement. So your favorite entertainer, whoever that may be, for this social cause or reason. So if I would make one, it would be Bob Marley for global peace. And then just put why you chose this cause. Does that make sense?
yeah.
You're just going to create an endorsement, which means it can just be a 1-page endorsement. Whoever your favorite celebrity is, you can put them in and say, you know, my favorite celebrity for this social cause. Or if you had a celebrity that you wanted to do a social cause that hasn't, this is just hypothetical. If you don't want to create a advertisement, the second part is a little bit more writing intensive and explaining why philanthropy, which is the art of giving back, can be negative. So if the money's not distributed equally among the people who need it, what's the point? And if it's cosmetic, which means it's not real, it's just to change the public perception of someone. So if a celebrity gets in trouble and they're out doing community work, are they doing the community work because they care about the community? Or are they doing the community work because they don't want to be sentenced to a long jail sentence? So there's 4 different ways there. There is an article that's down here at the bottom that says philanthropy doesn't care about Black people. You can use that as a reference to find some information. Okay, so that's checkpoint number 2. That'll be up on Summit, and I will send that to people that are on Summit individually or technologically challenged right now. Okay, so our EQ today is, what do athletes and celebrities risk when they speak out or protest? I think one of the first things we studied was Colin Kaepernick, and he lost endorsements, which means he lost the ability to play. He lost the ability to play in the NFL. He lost money, but in the end, he ended up coming out better in the wash. So here's some examples of celebrities who have lost endorsements because of comments about social issues. Now, I don't know if you guys know any of these celebrities, but we're going to go through them real quick. Where's it at? So 7 top celebrities who lost major endorsement deals because of things that they've said or done. Sharon Stone, who was an actor way back in the 90s. Yes, I know it's a long time ago. She lost her Christian Dior. Do you ladies familiar with Christian Dior?
That's Dior.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not bougie. A Dior. Dior. Well, she lost her advertisement with them because she spoke out about the treatment of people in China. This guy, Gilbert Gottfried, he's the Aflac duck. Have you ever seen the Aflac duck?
Yeah.
He was the voice of the Aflac duck. He lost money because he chose to make jokes about people dying in a tsunami, which isn't funny. Usually, jokes about people are a bad idea, especially if they're deceased. So he lost a lot of money because of that. Hank Williams Jr., I don't expect you to know who he is. He used to sing the Monday Night Football theme back in the 80s and 90s. And he said something about President Obama playing golf with John Boehner was like Hitler playing golf with Netanyahu. So he basically compared the President of the United States. Okay, we'll do. Surely, yeah. Comparing Hitler to Obama, and he lost all his endorsements. Whoopi Goldberg, we may know, some of us may know Whoopi Goldberg. She's on a show called The View. It's like a panel of women that talk about issues. I've only seen it once or twice, but she was doing, she lost her endorsement with Slim Fast because of comments that she made about George W. Bush. Sybil Shepherd, who was a prominent actor in the 80s and 90s, she had an endorsement with the beef industry just to come out and said that she doesn't eat beef. So they canceled her endorsement. Manny Pacquiao, who is still a fighter, and he ended up saying some homophobic remarks. That word basically, Shamir, welcome. That word is basically things that are negative toward people who are gay. So he said homophobic remarks and lost a bunch of money for saying stuff like that. And Ryan Lochte, and he was just a disaster. This guy was in the swim team in 2016, and he lost Ralph Lauren, Speedo, Airweave, all these things. They terminated all his endorsement deals because he exaggerated a story that he was robbed at gunpoint at a gas station. And it was just an absurd story. And because of that, he lost his endorsements. So celebrities are in a spotlight. And when they come out and they speak about things, mostly social things or untrue things, they lose endorsements, which are worth millions of dollars for them. So I guess my question to you is, only one celebrity on that list was of color, which is Whoopi Goldberg. Do you think that there is worse treatment for celebrities of color who speak out? What's the First Amendment? What does the First Amendment give you the right to have in this country? No one knows the First Amendment? Someone has to know the First Amendment. Take a guess. Kiara, what does the First Amendment guarantee all Americans? The right to what? It's right there in front of you.
Have speak, right? There's opinion, speak.
Yep.
The right to.
Absolutely, free speech. So the First Amendment in the United States gives us freedom of religion, assembly, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. That's the four things that the First Amendment gives us. So when these celebrities say things or come out and endorse things, in a way, it's a violation of their First Amendment right. But the people that endorse them also have the right to remove them for what they think is something negative. So the agenda is basically talking about the risk of speaking out as a celebrity. So the essential question is, why do athletes and why do I keep saying why? Because I slept 4 hours last night, that's why. What do athletes and celebrities risk when they speak out? So we're going to get two sections. We might break it into two different classes. We're going to look at the civil rights movement and the American temperature on race relations in the 1950s and 1960s. And as a direct result of that, we're going to look at the 1968 Olympic Games and the risks involved with speaking out or protest. So in the 1960s, if you're in my other class or my African-American history class, you've learned about Jim Crow laws and black codes and their 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. But during the 1960s, a lot of black power and civil rights movements began to arise because people had quite enough of the treatment of black Americans, had reached a boiling point. Malcolm X, who is pretty much one of my favorite people of all time, he once said that we must obtain our freedom and our rights by any means necessary. If those means meant violence, then it meant violence. But this was adopted by some of the black athletes at the 1968 Games. So the first thing I do is I'm going to show you, there should be a video on the civil rights movement. I know we know a lot about it as is, but this is more of a refresher. So let me make sure I'm getting this the right spot.
FanDuel Sportsbook makes it easy to bet live during the game. Make it even easier. We got Hall of Famer Orlando.
Okay, so this is only 4 minutes long. It's a brief history of this, what was going on in the 1960s in the United States as far as the civil rights movement. So let's take 4 minutes and watch this real quick.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the history of the American Civil Rights Movement. The end of the American Civil War in 1865 effectively meant the end of slavery, but African Americans were in for a long struggle before they were finally awarded equal rights. As of 1870, all eligible male citizens were able to vote. However, blacks were discouraged to by violence and eventually legal stipulations. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled to maintain racial segregation in private businesses in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Soon broadened to include schools, many southern states applied this separate but equal mentality to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application of Jim Crow laws, which resulted in blacks being treated as second-class citizens. Segregated schools, public transit, restrooms, water fountains, and more continued well into the 1900s. In 1909, a group of prominent black and white campaigners created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. Their goal was to increase racial equality and challenge issues like the Jim Crow laws. Unfortunately, it was between 1910 and 1930 that white supremacist group the Ku Klux Klan saw its biggest expansion amid increased racial friction. Following the First World War, the NAACP was devoted to ending lynching by white vigilantes. By mid-century, the group became instrumental in the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka court case. This class action suit filed in 1951 asked that segregation in schools be struck down. Taken to the Supreme Court, the case resulted in the first integrated school in the United States to open in the fall of 1955. Encouraged by the decision, the civil rights movement began to hold high-profile boycotts, marches, sit-ins, and other peaceful protests. These included 1955's Montgomery bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks. A watershed moment came in 1957 when a high school in Arkansas admitted a group of African American students nicknamed the Little Rock Nine. Protested by fellow students, the governor, and even the state's National Guard, President Dwight Eisenhower eventually intervened to ensure the students' safe passage. By 1962, universities also began integrating, though black students were still met with protests and violence. The Southern Freedom Movement continued into the 60s with support from newly elected President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The violence of the Birmingham, Alabama campaign influenced the president to fully endorse the movement.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
On June 19, 1963, he proposed a civil rights bill to Congress, which was approved in 1964 after his death with support from President Lyndon Johnson. The bill struck down existing legislation that allowed for discrimination, and its approval was largely influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington of August 1963.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Capturing the attention of the media and the population, this event attracted hundreds of thousands of people in support of civil rights. Following that, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ended the prejudiced voting system. Instantly effective, blacks began voting and running for public office. However, just days later, on August 11th, a violent six-day riot in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Watts resulted in 34 deaths. This was indicative of a period of racially motivated violence that occurred in the mid to late 1960s. This era also saw the rise of Black Power, led in large part by Stokely Carmichael, in opposition to extremists like the Ku Klux Klan. This ideology was exemplified by the Black Panther Party, which followed the principles set forth by Malcolm X. Rising to prominence in the 1950s, his radical ideas advocated militancy for blacks.
Black people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied not only with the white man, but they're dissatisfied with these Negroes who have been sitting around here posing as leaders and spokesmen for black people and actually making the problem worse instead of making the problem better.
He remained an influential and controversial human rights activist until his assassination in 1965. The murders of civil rights leaders continued when Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in April 1968 and Robert Kennedy 2 months later. Despite racial tensions continuing into the 1990s, progress has been measurable. The election of President Barack Obama in 2008 is seen by many to be a culmination of centuries of work in favor of racial equality.
This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall. And why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath.
Okay. So there's a couple themes in that video that talk about the civil rights movement. We saw Malcolm X in that video, and he believed in black militancy. He believed that, just like the other class I teach this morning about John Brown, he believed that black people had had enough in America of mistreatment. I think that we're still fighting that fight today. We have the Black Lives Matter movement. A black man was shot in Philadelphia over the weekend. I don't know if you guys heard about that one too. But it seems like every other week there's still shootings of people of color. There's still mass social injustice. So the reason that I showed you that video is because I wanted to talk about the year 1968. In 1968, RFK, or Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was John F. Kennedy's brother, was assassinated. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968. Malcolm X in 65. So there was a lot of killing going on of people who spoke out against racial injustice. I read an article about one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter being found dead a few weeks ago. It seems to be a pattern in this country. When you speak up against racial inequality, you find yourself dead. So there's more than one way to fight racial inequality. This is going back to our themes of celebrities and athletes. Today, we're going to focus on the Black athletes that were involved in the 1968 games. Right before the 1968 games, the Black athletes decided to boycott. Have you heard this word before? Boycott? What does it mean to boycott something? If I said tomorrow, let's boycott a certain retailer. Oops, sorry, that was meant for everybody. What does it mean to boycott? If you have to look it up, go ahead and look it up online. What does the word boycott mean? Wake up, please, and respond to me. What does boycott mean? Thank you, Shamir. Excellent.
You said what does what mean?
The word boycott.
Boycott?
Mhm.
Ain't that when the people was like holding up the signs and stuff?
Yes, good. That's
When
good
it-
feedback.
All right.
A boycott is a form of protest, and it also, Shamir said that to stop supporting the place or person. So when Rosa Parks in the early 1960s decided not to give her seat up on the bus in Montgomery, Black people just simply stopped riding the bus. If we were to boycott SEPTA, they would go out of business. You know that, right? Because over 70% of their riders are people of color. So to boycott something means to not take place in it, to not take part of it. It can be a form of protest, but usually it means we're going to stop buying their goods. We're going to stop supporting the place or person. So in 1968, the athletes, all the Black athletes going to the Olympics said, if we cannot be treated like human beings in our own country, we're not going to go abroad and represent our country in the Olympics. And there was two figures in this boycott. And I want to show you, I know I use a lot of visual stuff, but I just find that to be a lot more interactive. So this video is going to show you the Black athletes who are preparing to boycott, and then why the actions of the two athletes that we're going to talk about were so controversial. So this is the first part. They were going to boycott the 1968 games, and this video I'll explain why, okay? So as I get rid of these ads.
The 1968 U.S. Olympic track and field team is considered one of the greatest ever assembled to represent the U.S. in the Olympics. They won 28 medals and set 8 world records at the Games in Mexico City. The team included some of the fastest runners in the world at the time, like sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who made history when they accepted their medals and then raised their fists during the playing of the U.S. national anthem in a protest full of symbolism. And they almost didn't even show up that year.
Black men and women athletes have unanimously voted to fully endorse and participate in a boycott of the World Olympic Games in 1968.
Members of the team threatened to stay home in protest of racist treatment of black athletes in America.
They will not participate in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City unless something is done about these terrible evils and injustices.
So in case our black boys don't want to go,
What would they have to do for you to go to Mexico?
boycott is still on.
The story of this silent protest and the boycott that almost was starts with the buttons all three medal winners wore that day, the Olympic Project for Human Rights. The Olympic Project for Human Rights, or OPHR, was founded in 1967 by sociologist, educator, and former star athlete Dr. Harry Edwards. It was a coalition of prominent Olympic athletes that threatened to derail American Olympic glory by opting out of the Games, to protest the racism in sports that, for decades, had gone unaddressed. In the mid-20th century, sports seemed to be a leading example of improved racial equality in the United States. Black athletes like football player Kenny Washington and baseball player Jackie Robinson broke racial barriers by joining professional leagues in 1946 and 1947, which, until that point, had been whites only. College and professional sports teams gradually integrated from there, years ahead of racial segregation legally ending in the United States.
So the media began to promote the black athlete as a symbol that racial democracy existed in the United States. If Jackie Robinson can make it, then why can't other blacks make it? And so it was kind of a factor that was used to dismiss the question of institutionalized racism.
But in the 1960s, the myth of racial progress in America began to dissolve. The Civil Rights Act ended legal segregation in 1964, but Black Americans continued to face institutionalized racism and police brutality.
Integration simply wasn't successful in terms of improving Black people's lives, and you needed to force further change.
Years of frustration ultimately erupted in widespread violent riots.
I think the further we get away from it, we underestimate the influence of the riots. The riots happened in a lot of urban cities across America. Black people still live in terrible socioeconomic conditions in the cities, and that was just as much a problem as Jim Crow laws. So how do you attract attention to that?
A growing Black Power movement and Black student movement in the 1960s emboldened Black athletes to speak up about the racial injustices they endured off the field.
There's no difference between black and white athlete. We're all out there sweating. We run on two legs. But it's a difference in the way society treats us after we leave the track.
But with the 1968 Olympics coming up, Black athletes saw an opportunity to push for change.
The idea of a Black Olympic boycott had been around since 1959, and it went through various fits and stops until you get to the Black Power Conference in 1967. And the Black Power Conference basically argued that you should use any means possible to force the government to pay attention to institutionalized racism.
For Harry Edwards, that meant organizing the Olympic Project for Human Rights.
I think one of those things that are necessary right now is the Olympic boycott movement and the whole revolt of the black athlete in this country.
He realized that he could use Black sports participation as a way to attract attention to the problem.
The OPHR had 5 key demands, among them being to disinvite South Africa and Rhodesia, 2 countries practicing apartheid, from competing in the Games, the removal of openly racist International Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage, and hiring Black coaches to U.S. teams. The potential boycott became a hot topic in the news and of debate among athletes.
All the black athletes want to run, but we don't want to close the door on millions of black people here in the United States. I don't see a boycott really helping the Negro cause.
In the months leading up to the Games in Mexico City, the OPHR kept members of the press guessing whether they would attend or not.
We will let you know about the future of your Olympic team when we deem it proper and when we feel that you can handle that kind of information. Right now, we just don't think that you're ready.
Tom, when will come a determination whether you, Lee Evans, and others will or will not boycott the Olympics?
I wish I could tell you.
Ultimately, it came down to a vote.
The decision was made that if there wasn't really a kind of unified or the majority of that Black athletes would participate, the boycott would be called off because those who did boycott, like Tommy Smith, would have been boycotting in vain. Another Black person simply would have taken their place.
Even though most of the OPHR's demands remained unmet, the athletes headed to Mexico City with plans to make their own demonstration if the opportunity arose, which it did. on October 16th, following the men's 200-meter final. OPHR members Tommy Smith and John Carlos won gold and bronze, respectively, and Smith set a new world record. After the race, they solemnly approached the medal stand, shoeless, wearing black socks, accepted their medals, and just as the U.S. national anthem began to play, did this. For the full duration of the Star-Spangled Banner, Smith and Carlos bowed their heads and each raised a black-gloved fist in the air to protest the racial injustice in their home country and show solidarity with those fighting for equality. The fists are not the only symbolic gesture in this image, as Tommy Smith explained later.
The right glove signified the power within Black America. The left glove signified Black unity. The scarf that was worn around my neck signified blackness. John Carlos and me wore black socks without shoes to also signify our poverty.
Additionally, John Carlos wore his jacket unzipped, a violation of Olympic etiquette to show solidarity with working-class Americans. He also wore beads to honor victims of lynching. And finally, all three medal winners, including silver medalist Peter Norman of Australia, wore
buttons reading Olympic Project for Human Rights. There were some boos in the stadium last night.
This moment was the ultimate manifestation of the work of Harry Edwards and the OPHR to intersect outspoken political activism with sport. And it ended Smith and Carlos's Olympics.
When the International Olympic Committee suspended them Friday, their credentials were taken away and they were told they could not stay in Mexico.
They were dropped from the U.S. Olympic team and given 48 hours to leave Mexico. Sports journalist Howard Cosell criticized the U.S. Olympic Committee's decision in this fiery broadcast from Mexico City.
They say the games are sports, not politics, something separate and apart from the realities of life. But the black athlete says he is a human being before he is an athlete, that he wants equality everywhere, not just within the arena.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos were saying black athletes don't have it made in American society. We may be famous, but we face the same discrimination that other black people do. And we don't appreciate being used as a way to counter the black struggle coming out of black communities. Black athletes are black. People have multiple identities. I think Colin Kaepernick is representing a voice in the black community, which is the same thing I think that Carlos and Smith were saying, that the black struggle is more than just about integration and assimilation. It's also about empowering this particular community. And people like Tommy Smith, Harry Edwards, John Carlos came from poor black communities.
Which is why this protest on the Olympic medal stand wasn't just about sports, as Tommy Smith explained to Howard Cosell the next day.
Do you think you represented all black athletes in doing this? I can say I represented Black America. I'm very proud to be a black man and also to have won the gold medal. And this, I thought, I could represent my people by letting them know that I'm proud to be a black man.
Okay. So this is going to have to be a two-part lesson, but we only have a few minutes left. So I just want to get your feedback, a little bit of feedback about. We're going to do this. We're going to have a lot more information about Smith and Carlos, and actually the white man on the podium and what happened to him after they stood up for black rights. So just a little bit of feedback before we go. Do you think that the gentleman who Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who used black symbolism to stand up in a social environment, were punished too harshly? They were actually given 48 hours to leave the country. What's your thoughts on that? So I'm basically asking that are Black athletes that stand up for social matters treated differently than others? No one has an opinion? What's your opinion? I'm going to give you homework if you don't respond to me.
You said, what's our opinion?
Yeah, what is your opinion? Do you believe that when Black athletes stand up for social issues that they're treated more harshly than their white counterparts?
You said, do I think Black athletes
When they stand up for
stand up for social?
do you think they're treated worse than white athletes?
Yeah. Well, majority of them do get treated worse than the whites because of their skin complexion. But it all depends on
IQ for the game. They think a Black man has less of an IQ of the game than a white man.
okay, the Black man has less of an IQ than a white man.
That's what they think.
Well, that's what they think.
Okay, I was about to say, who told you that nonsense? It's not just an IQ thing. It's a social perception that, just like we saw with Colin Kaepernick and all the other ones, this is where it started. It's the perception that Black athletes in America have it good, that they shouldn't be complaining about social issues.
They puppets. They getting paid millions of dollars to do what they love, do they grew up what they had to do to get out of poverty or to get out of the fucked up situation that they're in. You try balancing that, living in the hood, going to school and all that shit, and not get caught up.
I have.
Shit. You live in North Philly?
North Philly, 16th and Susquehanna.
Oh, shit.
Hey, you from the hood?
Yeah. So I have.
No, but
I
that's,
have.
but that's still that's temple though. Like that's protected by temple. Like you feel me?
Not really.
Not in 1986.
Oh yeah. No, I agree.
43 years old. It's not protected.
Oh, yeah, you know, my bad. It was my language. I'm sorry. No, you sound like a young teacher. My bad.
That's okay. I'm an old man, but I appreciate your input. But it is, I'm going to have to end here, but it is this perception that continues since slavery in this country is that you have made it as a Black man in America already. So why would you risk what you have acquired for people that you really don't know, for people that aren't associated with you or giving you money? That's the whole point of this class. Do we have a responsibility to give back to our communities? So I will end it on that note. We're going to talk about 1968. We're going to talk about Tommy Carlos and John Carlos and Tommy Smith, and this perception that it's all about protest. It's like, don't protest this way, don't protest that way, don't riot. But at the end of the day, the message is don't protest at all, because we don't want to hear your protest. And America has had this problem for 400 years. But I don't have time to get into all that now. So I'm just going to do a check out attendance, make sure I have everybody who was here. Okay. And Amira, I will send you the checkpoints and a way for you to get your work into me. Okay?
Me, a Boston?
Amira. I'm sorry. Miss
No,
Jackson.
me. Yeah.
Miss
Oh
Jackson.
well, can you send them to me too, because I need to get them done too.
Absolutely. I'll take
Please,
care of
thank,
it. Okay.
thank you.
You guys enjoy your afternoon and have a good day.
You too.
All right.